This is not a conquest. It is a funeral procession.
Unless you figure out a way to disarm us. To keep us from moving forward. Have you?
Yes. We are going to kill your science. We will do it with our sophons.
What is a sophon?
It's a proton. One we have turned into a sentient computer.
You can't make a computer that small. It's impossible.
Impossible for you. The universe has more dimensions than the 3 we occupy. They are hidden, folded up far too small for us to see. But we have the technology to unfold them. We summon energies you cannot imagine, and focus them on a single proton. When we unfold its higher dimensions, even a tiny proton becomes something very large indeed. We make a mind as large as a world. Sophon, are you awake? Awake and aware. I understand my purpose. I am ready to return to my original size. Please proceed. We used all our resources to make 4 sophons. 2 pairs of 2. Each pair is entangled. Connected on the quantum level. 2 remain with us. The other 2 we've sent to you. Everything they see and hear, we see and hear at the same time, even when they are light years apart. A proton has virtually no mass. Accelerating them to nearly light speed is easy. Even you can do that. They entered your solar system months ago. We sent them to your planet. To the places where your best minds explore reality at its most fundamental level. And we will destroy the science that could defeat us.
Your science is destroying your world, Leah from Andromeda. You are descended from a great race which destroyed itself. I have told you before that your ancestors were not born from this planet. Many years ago, they inhabited a very important world situated beyond Sion, in this same galaxy. Those men had almost reached perfection. Their physical state was optimal, their emotional state tranquil with a tendency toward the spiritual sublime. The scientists possessed a knowledge without limits, and they were profoundly aware of a great part of the secrets of the universe. It was then, when filled with arrogance and anxious for power, they set out in pursuit of the universe. They desired to set themselves above the colonies on their frontiers. They became ambitious for triumph and glory. That is how it began. When man entered into conflicts of possession, all became more difficult, and there is where the decline began. In that epoch, which can only be measured through cycles of arc in the universe. One folk developed friction with another, and your ancestors decided to intervene with all, and they possessed powerful arms that could eliminate any system, no matter how great it was. Other folk came to the aid of those who found themselves disadvantaged. Thus began one of the greatest conflagrations and explosive fires in memory. The arms employed by them caused grave damage to the human race, and the descendants of those who survived began to demonstrate important signs of mental dystrophy and decline, and emotional and physical instability. It was then, after conscientious and diligent analysis, their DNA had suffered important mutations. The scientists who carried out these studies comprehended the incapacity to make war without prejudicing their own folk. The deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, carries in itself an interesting register of the personality of the individual in question himself, which at birth carries fixed signs of personality. The question was whether the DNA had been seriously affected, and that nobody leave the area in which there still prevailed important radioactive clouds irradiating your race with radiation exposure. Your race, which would not survive for many generations. The situation was thus when they finally solicited the help of greater civilizations. But man was dying rapidly. Our own comparisons desired not to expose themselves extensively to these radiations. Finally aid came, but when these began to evacuate the survivors, the knowledgeable, the scientists, and the great men of profound intelligence had died. Those greatest civilizations, carrying out the operation, suggested that the human race as such would not survive very long. They would have to restrain their destructive impulses a great deal, because at a certain time in the future, this could throw back to all the negative aspects. I will explain. The explosion to which the human were exposed stimulated the degeneration of certain cells of cerebral neurons. Those men were hysterical, insane, and violence predominated in them. It was necessary to restrain these impulses. The greatest civilizations made a judgment, and the men of advanced civilizations determined that mankind had lost the privilege of knowledge and even of life, and that those same scientists had completely destroyed the great manuscripts of knowledge which had been acquired over thousands of years, and had preserved for the superiority of the race and the prolongation of its life. Over the passage of time, man never gained control between the good and the bad, and this was detected by the advanced civilizations. It was in this manner that this same mankind lost his place in the universe. All this abyss of ambition, power, violence, and greed would remain seated in the mind, at least of those same ones who would acquire the power of knowledge to overcome that which for them was hidden. Because of that, those races were injured by a limitation of mind due to the dystrophy and decline suffered by the DNA, for which it will take years and many generations until you again, through heredity and persistence, rediscover the greater knowledge of life, which paradoxically you intend to come to through the knowledge of death. Upon discovering the atom, you also discovered its destruction, thus not the origin of life. This was the sentence of man, self-destruction being a greater tendency toward death than toward life. That was seated in the DNA, and as such will persist for the remaining time of your world. Some descendants who preserved intact certain qualities overleap much in between in your world, such as artists, musicians, writers, and even the scientists. Thus it was how you again began to open a breach in the fields of science. It was as if the internal DNA remembered the glorious past with flashes of artificial light. But this will resurge when some of the ramifications less affected are resurging as an effect of heritage. In effect, your race is in decline. There still are beings whose pure nature was not such affected by it, since they had not become knowledgeable. Well then, another important factor would be the arrival of great magnetic clouds that act as a stimulant upon the mind of man. Remember that energy can stimulate, creating fountains of light of memory, like sparks coming through the tunnel of time. For this reason, science had developed at the time that it did. Bright minds have been receiving, by amplification of the DNA and genes, knowledge arriving from an inconceivable beyond. These same men were attracted to it by certain actual potencies, and a new cycle had been initiated. Undoubtedly, you have also inherited from your ancestors the irremediable tendency toward destruction. The human being, finally, after many centuries of surviving and by titanic labors of reproduction confronted by climactic crises, has arrived at the point from which he departed. Why would a decadent race be permitted to survive and subsist? Well, that derives from one enormous voice of hidden origin that each one of the races or great civilizations in the universe know and must respect. Life is one of such values. The right to spring forth, to vibrate in accord with the universal notes must be respected, as there does not exist one single being identical with another in your country. We cannot as an intergalactic community reject anyone only because he is not suitable. We would be degrading our own civilization if we did but lend help to those who solicit it. But if the man is condemned to destroy himself, then why live? Many, too many of your people ask the same, why live? Though there also are too many who say to themselves, why not? The watchword amply promised to all the civilizations of the universe, the great objective, the challenge that is presented not only to your species, but to all the species disseminated throughout the galaxies, is the survival of your own species. As such, with all your purity, you are renewed by means of one descending from another. If this had been intended for your ancestors, and each one of those who lived as your ancestors had understood it, the human race would have improved notably, but that was not the case. The legacy to all the races is the knowledge, the eternal discovery, as if to live in a box of surprises among which you daily discover something fascinating. They continue to search unfruitfully for the chemical changes to which you were exposed in the origin of your existence, to arrive again perhaps at the destruction, always believing fictitious reasons for it, a form of justification for your impetus to violence. To measure the elapse of years Rand has been complicating his life. I have a vague idea of that which occurred to intervene in the chemical change at the organic level of the life of man. Because you understand me, I can tell you finally that I've come to believe that man himself has inherited a monster inside of him, against which he has to struggle all his life and at the same time coexist, sleep, eat, love, if that is possible, reproduce himself, and finally die. Though this monster does not exist in space-time in the cycle of existence, death represents no barrier to it. Will this hypothetical monster finally overcome? It has already overcome on various occasions, and it is implanted above in many human beings. This monster produces envy, doubts, jealousy, and hate. Whenever we have delivered our contribution to life, your children, engendered within a hereditary imperfection, will acquire that monster in which is accumulated all kinds of more or less negative tendencies. The race in your tremendous and titanic force to survive militates against the fears, suspicions many times unfounded of banalities of mind whose labyrinths are inexpugnable, has within itself a very long-standing charge, which is to populate the world without discarding the responsibility to create a race within a parameter of superliving, such that it comes to be a model for other species, demonstrating thus the capacity of engender not only to make it, but to obtain the subsistence of the race. Man in himself is more complicated than that which he apparently shows to the eyes of other civilizations. His mission for the moment will be to continue the species until the same will be aided by other greater civilizations, with the objective of finding the antidote, to call it such, to salvage and restore the magnificence lost to the DNA, because, though you may not believe it, man belongs to a race in danger of extinction. Will anyone come to save Earth's humanity? Yes, the greatest responsibility of the men of our greater civilizations is that some community must be imposed, and the truth is that they are confronted by the effects, already devastating, of the antithesis of life. Against it exists nothing that you could do, for which those of your folk must struggle. To survive without rupturing the harmony of equilibrium, when something has already suffered permanent mutations, it is more difficult to accomplish your recuperation. Perhaps our greater civilizations can achieve this completely, after which you will see green fields and blue skies, in which you not only observe the survival of one man or of all your humanity, but its complete emancipation. I said that I would tell you a secret. I shall talk to you of something which perhaps you know of as electronic clonation, one which in our world is denominated as something that you could translate as cell in hibernation. Your scientists advance in this field, but they still have not had enough time. The system of cloning was initiated as a means of safeguarding those civilizations on their way to extinction. The procedure to follow is to start out precisely to extract living cells and hibernate them. In space, there are many races which, for different reasons, have not proliferated normally. The Earth at one time was a paradise in which lived civilizations extinct today. It was then when the communities of superior civilizations decided to salvage some of them. Each folk has to arrive at being self-sufficient. It was then when each folk began to train themselves to sow what they ate. Also, regarding the quality of alimentation and nourishment, that each group should have to be adequate for its organic needs, all the races are distinct. Each one should know its own metabolism. The Japanese and the Chinese manifested genetic characteristics different from the copper-brown races, whose organism is adaptable to almost any climate and any alimentation. At first, all went marvelously, but what was initiated with success presented problems. After several years, the implantation of the races was no longer effective. Later, the root of the proliferation, the rapid increase of man, had grown in power, and any invasion of any terrain represented war. The red and the copper races were the first to arrive, and also the inheritors of the interplanetary knowledge. They had obtained such evolution, moral and social, that they were not massacred and worthily represented the man of Earth. The superior civilizations had foreseen that he who loved war would end up dominating the planet, and so it is. Once the Earth changed into a cosmopolitan planet consisting of diverse folk, the social type of problems began. It was evident that something was failing and that man was incapable of adapting himself socially. Every time he presented a chaotic appearance, each one of the integral members of the race believed he had the privilege of inheriting from his ancestors' land, conquered at the price of blood. The greater men of your planet have died with the idea that peace each time would be more utopic. Those men carried the primary clones in hibernation, and they began to implant clones in each group with the final result that each one of them would succeed in awakening in the terrestrial human the consciousness of survival. Clone. How did we discover that something like this existed? Each time some prominent or important or valiant one of the intergalactic community found himself in danger of dying, the clone would come to him and utilize one of his cells. Then it would produce a new being, eliminating all kinds of infirmities. This was also done to retain his knowledge, but at first a totally hybrid being was obtained, of which they say hybrid because his cells will not serve as clones afterwards. Nevertheless, the conscience of universal level elevated him to a different stratus, without the instincts of aggression. He had almost attained to optimum individuality. Original clones of the primitive body were jealously guarded by the scientists, who deposited these in laboratories located in inaccessible places, for example in high mountains. They froze those at low temperatures to the end that several centuries might pass and they could then be converted back into thinking beings. The means by which they're perfecting the system of electronic donation overcomes many deficiencies. For example, in actuality, it is no longer necessary to deposit them in frozen places. Today, they program the clone of themselves to survive an indeterminate number of cycles of time. And this in the same manner as the memory is controlled, together with the objective, this achieved through an electronic, magnetic, energetic stimulus. For which we tell you that it is important to know all of this when we comment on your understandings. Today, when the community of superior races decide that some member of whatever race merits the privilege of eternity, they effect the donation, but at a very high level. It is said that they have separated from matter, and only the memory persists in the being indescribably knowledgeable who generates his own energy. They create a chemical electrical augmentation similar to that required in your gestation when the determined being desires to be material. We have ample knowledge about life. We can be pure energy or organic material. The materialization is important for those of us interested in studying the conglomeration of planets and the proliferation of human beings of diverse races. Those superior civilizations who obtain the knowledge of longevity, as you call the natural prolongation of life, do not necessarily desire to be chosen, though in any case we desire to remain in the perspective of an eternity. Our scientists have acquired the knowledge of longevity, and utilizing it rationally, they succeed in augmenting the possibility of integrating us to the great community from where has emerged great personages. The life on my planet is more fascinating than you can imagine. Suppose that also on the earth, each one preferred the habitat to which he is accustomed. I travel much, dream continually of things that I see, know an infinity of knowledge, and being only 900 years old, my life has scarcely begun. What purpose has life? Life has the objective of overcoming the confusion when you are manifesting the antithesis of the energetical magnetic life, whether it be you or I, but not in a struggle to death, which in fact it is. What I want to say is not in a war as you are accustomed to on the earth. The struggle is inside to create virtues and to correct defects. I told you before that life in itself as a principle is an electromagnetic state of memory. Very well. When you are born in that memory, you come as a concentrated collection of knowledge, which you later discover by inertia. To create a balanced aspect in your life is your true struggle. You will have to raise one grade of intelligence to a grade such that your memory will serve to prolong your survival, because in your world they survive, struggling against the feelings and the qualities. Thus is initiated the true battle within oneself. Rather a calm emotional state. Upon achieving this, you will realize interesting phenomena in yourself. One person who has acquired the true tranquility emits a different flow of energy to that which continually is restless within himself. Some allow the species of monster that grows within them to dominate. Some succumb, some are destroyed, some overcome, some confront and triumph. That is already programmed in your memory forever. Then you will pass to a level above many. The energetic flow will accomplish changes in you, and in this manner will convert you into a kind of jewel to be redeemed. But when your tendencies are of leadership, authentic director of deeds, then you will be redeemable. The communities of superior civilizations will appear to you, redeeming you according to your achievements. Your world will not find itself prepared socially, nor economically, nor emotionally to confront the upcoming changes. Remember that speaking of the different characteristics demonstrated by one living being, I told you of other civilizations. You had asked me if there were beings more aggressive than the Earth humans inhabiting this universe. I mentioned that there was, and spoke about those who have been coming on various occasions to your world. There exist races that are dedicated to the domination of others without regard for the means by which they accomplish this. Those races are a danger to your race. The intergalactic community as well as the interstellar community are sure that these races are lying in wait and studying your humanity, and they represent a real threat to you. They scorn mercy to your empiricism and the rickety form of science that you possess. They have been coming to your world with complete freedom and have captured living beings, children, ancients, men, women, animals, fish, and they rob you of oxygen, hydrogen, and even absorb electric fluid of the supplies flowing to your great cities. Humans who, unfortunately, disappear and do not return anymore have been kidnapped by them. Clearly, not all these who are lost have been carried away by that race, but they have carried out innumerable captures. They also take specimens in danger of extinction to implant races or to extract their DNA and clone all of the organism for later implantation or to create new creatures. And also with human beings, they have achieved these implants. they have placed in danger a number of times the peace of Earth. In earlier years, this race has been classified in our archives and had been coming to your world where they studied the ionosphere, the stratosphere, the atmosphere, the grades and densities of the gases existing in the Earth's air. But above all, they had placed in practice discoveries that at times have been harmful to the planet in an attempt to dominate the planet slowly and silently. Their gift to the Earth is not peacefulness. Over 6,000 years ago, they came to the Earth for the first time. Their elevated stature soon made it appear that they were above the terrestrials, but their knowledge surprised them in such a manner that they submitted completely to those beings. In that time, they violated the women and took several thousands of human beings for their service. Nevertheless, they had not demonstrated a power superior to the terrestrials. Speaking of those men of your actual civilization, of the technical capacity that you now currently possess, they still had the material dematerializing ray and the power of the control of gravity. They possessed flying ships that were a marvel to the beings of Earth. All of the rulers listened to the words of these powerful beings who come from the sky. Profiting from this advantage, they took slaves for themselves, being treated as gods for that. Today they have become even more superior and are powerful in notable ways. This dangerous race lacks sentiments and experience no emotion at all. This is because their scientific ancestors achieved, more than 2,000 years ago, the eradication of fear in their minds, for the purpose of which their world would live in optimum individual circumstances. This dangerous race nevertheless achieved the eradication of all sentiment. They deprived themselves of love, of friendship, of benevolence, and finally of all sentiments that could obstruct their power. This was programmed for the civilizations that would follow. In your world, emotions of that type predominated. They observed how the hypersensibility of the individual could be used to develop profound hate, and how the absence of love many times induces not only the suicide of one person, but the annihilation of a whole race. This dangerous race eradicated definitely from their race the conscience and all respect for life. This being the case, they could be, comparatively speaking, the antithesis of your world. They came to Earth a long time ago, and after arriving proceeded to analyze all types of life here. They knew perfectly well the vulnerable points of man and discovered then that man had suffered genetic alterations. After deliberations among themselves, they determined that if the Earth human was on the other hand already predestined to disappear at the mercy of his own tendencies, the more appropriate it would be to condition him to serve them, for which they proceeded to appropriate him slowly at his own voluntude. They succeeded, according to their own purposes, in making the Earth a pilot planet, or auxiliary, destined for whatever emergency that might arise. They would implant laws in your planes itself that the inhabitants could not discard. Those who resisted would be subjected to single annihilation. They conditioned the Earth human to a mental level, slowly, without recourse to grave confrontations of violence, utilizing products which, in combination with the atmospheric gases, produce mental modifications in the race. They employed chemical elements in the air, in the waters, and in the earth itself. They cast derivatives of a liquid that can be produced in 3 states: gas, liquid, and solid, according to our studies. They cast all these in the oceans and seas, the rivers, lakes, clouds, etc. This promoted degenerative regressions in human life. In this manner, depending on the grade of mental level presented by the human being, they could, favored by the same violence that propitiates this finality, provoke confrontations between the continents. The different countries that proceed at the head scientifically will find themselves suddenly before an unusual violence inexplicably provoked there by they themselves, escalated to a level beyond which it could not be returned. Then the dangerous race will attack. The humans of Earth will be too occupied in belligerent confrontations with their neighbors to give much attention to the dangers that will overcome them in space. For when the human of Earth detects any anomaly, it will already be too late. If the scientists of your world can unite and analyze point by point all that has been discovered in the laboratories and advance from there, not only sharing but amplifying their knowledges, others, other worlds, other stellar systems, other galaxies, not just this particular dangerous race, who are a little more than 100 light years from your planet, but some far beyond your own galaxy, will contemplate your world with respect. This is the epoch in which they are aiming to come back to this solar system. They possess weapons unsuspected by your people, possess a technology superior to yours, are more than 3,000 years in advance scientifically. You have a world degraded, contaminated, and violent. Your beings, the humans of the earth, are destructive, liberal, incredulous. You do not have sufficient knowledge, not even the primordial, which will be the unity of the human race. For example, you know how to effect the separation of the atom, but you still do not have effortless mastery over matter at a fundamental level. Controlled fusion is still difficult and expensive for you. They, the dangerous race, do not possess atomic arms. To annihilate the human beings, they will then utilize inclusively the hydrogen that everybody stores in its own nature. They possess advanced technologies before which you would be devastated. It will require the alien of all your whole planet to repel one attack of the proportion which can be expected. The dangerous race have been dominating your world since the years from 1900, have been proposing that you yourselves annihilate each other, and perhaps when your world is desolated, they will come and colonize it. Thus they would increase even more the territory which they dominate. Your world worries us. A technical ingenuity moves within it that does not deserve to succumb to the hands of beings who have the earth at disadvantage. You may wonder why we have not done something. This would be to take the earth as a field of battle and forgetting that after the attack was repelled, your humanity would no longer exist and your world would be a hybrid planet. All try to avoid this, knowing that if life on earth comes to an end, it will be the end of a planet beautiful and replete with diverse forms of life. What is required is to prepare your scientists. But they do not know that all types of human beings always present similar forms. We have fundamentally observed that the Earth terrestrials in leadership positions, as well as your scientists with whom we have had contact, they are considered demented. Do not forget that we have studied your world through that which in my planet is equivalent to your terrestrial studies of sociology, archaeology, exobiology, cosmobiology, and the fundamental origins of the living being. The United States has advanced much in the investigation of life in space beyond that of the human being. They go at the head of discoveries and analysis. Russia ignores the naturalness of life in space, saying they are on the offensive, thinking that all they encounter here on your planet is coming from the same place. The offensive, of course, is more focused on neighboring countries than possible threats from space. Both countries know that they are opening scarcely one portal on something that has more behind it than they imagine. But they do not take into account that the parameters are weakly documented with which to compare one circumstance with another. If one scientist does not have one point over that which supports one theory, speaking comparatively with respect to some object, this could not be classified adequately, and very probably that proof would be lost, misplaced, or simply saved for posterity. Your world has been disunited from times immemorial. We are trying to instill the knowledge of worlds under threat such as yours whenever we become aware of possible dangers. The dangerous race have prepared surprisingly well to enter into belligerent and aggressive conflicts with worlds more prepared than yours. But when the inhabitants of one planet unite and repel the attack in simultaneous form, they cannot resist for much time outside of their ambient levels and opt to leave that planet in peace. They are trying to dominate your world by the end of this century. They believe that you would not be able to repel the attack. Earth is at the mercy of those mercenaries of space, but you do have extraterrestrial allies. There is an important civilization which could charge themselves with being an Earth ally, but we could not decide for them. Our civilization, we are not an attack squadron. We are what in your world is called archaeological or astronomical investigators. We are prepared for attacks on our ships, but greater elements are required to protect a world like yours, the superior civilization, willing to be an Earth ally. We could ask them to come to you through a truce of pacification, which you prepare that overcomes your frictions and augments your capacity for knowledge. The human man can do this. It is an important race. Moreover, we could help those extraterrestrials, as you call us, to continue accumulating in you all the time more new knowledges. From one time to this date, has been observed a scientific advance in the humanity, being that we have accelerated the accumulation of knowledge through ideas for mental implantation at a psychic vibrational level. In the same manner as a receiver, such as the brain, to which we send signals. At this time already, you are proceeding toward more knowledges of antimatter and the discovery of new weapons. According to the manner in which you receive the signals, whoever captures them discovers the unusual ideas never before imagined by him. Like Medusas, they emerge from the mind. At the same time is granted the capacity of analysis and then absorption of knowledge by inertia. Generally, we do this with scientists who represent potential countries, or scientists who in some manner have a form of rapid reception of these discoveries. For that, today, the knowledge derived from other discoveries occurs with frequency, and a rare change in science has been noted. Your race is one civilization on its way to psychic mutation. Your race has no other recourse apart from knowledge. The primordial is peace within yourselves, the elements your race could employ during an attack. The chemistry, gaseous, liquid, or solid that neutralizes attacks coming from space. But there are risks. The accumulation of energy in your own soil. That could be a danger that you could die at the mercy of such accumulation. The enemy would use that against you. But you can avoid this. One measure of emergency would be to congeal the nuclear arms to a solid in chambers that are protected from intense heat. This process must be done slowly because the contrary would provoke chemical reactions in the ground. You could freeze them to a little more than 1300 degrees below zero. I want you to note a comparison between that which you have and that which you can lose. Perhaps you will forget this conversation, but always remember this earth, your dreams, your liberty, your scientific world, your education, the language of the animals, the aroma of the vegetation, and the splendor of the existence which emerges from one point so small, microscopic, how grande. I want to discuss an antimatter weapon. Many civilizations have come to our planet in different epochs in search of more powerful weapons. Beings from planets of higher knowledge intend to save you by taking you out of reach of the warmongering terrestrial man of Earth, who day by day becomes more belligerent and aggressive. The nations of Earth will annihilate each other for the possession of such a weapon. The diabolic weapon. I am speaking of a most powerful weapon whose longevity has extended back over the centuries. An ominous aggressive force has been guarding in the marine depths this weapon, since your world has been studied for a long time by beings of other planets, with the intent to evade knowledgeable examination of their confirmation. 6 million years before your own time, the continents were found to form only one territory, and the nations were relatively close to one another. But then, one night, the sea swallowed an entire city which you call Atlantis. The race who lived in the center of this great continent were drowned when the land split in two. They had come to be highly knowledgeable, but their ambition to know ever more and more brought them to total ruin. There, in that large city, the great Atlantean scientists struggled to reach martial supremacy. They wanted to control the galaxy without having the mental capacity to achieve it. The intended result was to obtain absolute dominion over your world and of the whole system. Those, the Atlanteans, had come from the third planet of this solar system, which then was Maldek, today known as the asteroids belt. This third planet was a refuge for beings coming from Sion, whose powerful sciences had made them invincible. Nevertheless, those scientists were divided by frictions among themselves, and some, also scientists, immigrated to Earth. The Earth then occupied the fourth place in this solar system. As colonists of the Earth, they became undesirable and intolerable to the inhabitants who had been established before, to perversity and the domination they exercised through their sophisticated arms and weapons with which they subjugated the smaller nations. The Earth came to be an enormous receptor of beings coming from other worlds, of which the diversity of creeds and customs as well as the genetic differences was great. The recently populated planet attracted many civilizations due to the richness in minerals it contained. At that time there was only one continent. Your planet was something like a great greenhouse observed with great suspicion from the enormous planet Maldek. Once on the Earth, those emigrant scientists explored the origin of man utilizing animals in danger of extinction, causing terrible and monstrous mutations between human and animal genes. They captured animals of other worlds for experimentation in fields not only of genetics but of clones, and the monsters they produced in the laboratory were released more than once in circuses of diversion, confronting them with slaves and prisoners. Their experiments encompassed great fields of study, even coming to include tests of human resistance to poisonous gases which provoke genetic imitations in the descendants of those humans, causing thus themselves uncontrollable epidemics which isolated entire nations. The AIDS epidemic and the COVID pandemic were the result of American and Chinese biological warfare experiments that got out of control. The Maldekians became very worried, but the terrestrials were not interested in applying restrictions imposed in accordance with cosmic agreements, and they rebelled against the laws of Maldek, where the respect for life was the first mandate to be considered. There were great astronomers who, knowing the exact movement of each one of the bodies in your solar system, upon perfecting the antimatter weapon, discovered a way to modify the orbits of each one of them. The stars radiate energy in sufficient quantity to power ships at a great distance. Nevertheless, despite what they had achieved, the terrestrial Atlanteans were not satisfied with their accomplishments and wanted to reach greater power on the planet Earth than that which had been achieved by the scientists of Maldek. They had at their disposition many forms of acquiring dominion over science, but they did not know enough about something that disturbed them: antimatter. Remember that antimatter surrounds matter, that there is more empty space in the galaxies than planets which it surrounds, after which then the nothing is much greater than that which itself exists. Moreover, the dead are attracted enormously by it. It is frequently asked in the same way that you ask today, where do the dead go? Over the years of profound study and experimentation on anxiously trying to control the power of the magnetic vortex that produces life, they succeeded in discovering the anti-magnetic origin of the same existence. They suspected that a powerful energy produced light, but they ignored the significance that it was that which sustained the nothing in the galaxy. They wanted to dominate the psyche in the human being and the biological energy that moves man, as well as the dynamics that sustain the movement of the planets, the suns, and the stars. They were ambitious to obtain the immense power to dominate and subject the universe itself. Then it was when they came to perfect a weapon authorized only to the great civilization, a weapon that converted living bodies into antimatter space. This weapon annihilated all, and absolutely all, of a living being. You know that matter dies, but the energetic essence, bioenergetic psyche, survives. It is a powerful mental energy that retains a great quantity of vitality and whose memory persists through the centuries. This is the energy that moves you and me and all others. The planets which possess life possess memory. Well, those lesser Atlanteans, the terrestrians so to speak, of the time upon creating this powerful weapon, were able with it to annihilate also the energy that moves us, the same that you call spirit. But let us return to Maldek. Intergalactic law prohibited weapons such as this for civilizations or scientists such as those that demonstrated imprudence and insensible rebellion. The law of mutual respect was lost among the diversity of races and creeds that began to multiply on your world. Since the Earth and your solar system is on the edge of this galaxy, the terrestrials knew they were isolated from the greatest civilizations that exist in the other galaxy, and for such knew that they were secure from any inspection on the part of those civilizations, at least for a certain time. That weapon possessed an anti-nuclear reactor and anti-energy, and was as well a molecular disintegrator, magnetic destabilizer, force neutralizer, and receptor of energy of any class. With it, they could control life and movement. The new weapon was called an antimatter device, and it gave them a power never possessed before. The difference between the antimatter weapon and the conventional arms of that time was abysmal. The common arms then possessed could exterminate matter, but not the organic energy, But the new and sensational discovery, as it seemed to them, permitted them to destroy the psychic and spiritual energy of the human being. This weapon could exterminate both entities, the material and the spiritual. You give the name spirit and matter to those psychic and organic components of the human being. They both are entitled. What you call spirit is indestructible by conventional death. Its energy continues even after death. But this weapon absolutely exterminated all of the vibrational or psychic being, whether it was in motion or not. And once it was activated toward an objective, it would destroy it searching. But the sound, being guided by the respiration of people in the area or by the expiration of the vegetation, it leveled entire cities and forests, being the only absorber of all its energy, and could disintegrate them. This weapon alarmed the rest of the Maldekians, who sought without result for ways to resist it. Its powerful force exterminated all living cells, no matter how small they were. It could change or modify the course of any planet, no matter how big it seemed, and could provoke catastrophes in solar systems, such as yours, causing collisions of the orbiting worlds by creating an anti-magnetic vortex current. The creation of this monstrous weapon worried the Maldekians so much that they felt responsible for whatever might happen on the Earth. They were decided by such to come to your planet to finally try to dissuade those who abandoned the project and return to the times of peace. But it was already too late, the terrestrials having advanced too much, knowing that this gave them ample power among great interplanetary scientists. The Maldekians, repeatedly confronted by the resistance of the terrestrials, decided by themselves to deactivate this weapon, though they knew that they risked the stability of your world. Despite all, their intentions were in vain. The terrestrials decided to shield this weapon beneath an enormous pyramid, which they guarded day and night. Upon seeing this, the Maldekians declared war, which lasted almost 1 year. It was a belligerent confrontation, as difficult as powerful between identical force structures. Nevertheless, the terrestrials had decided to use the weapon when the time came. Once more, in the midst of that conflict, the scientists of Maldek returned to negotiations to convince the Atlanteans to desist in their decision, but the latter responded with more frequent bellicose aggressions. They would not abandon that symbol of their new power. The terrestrials were not prudent nor characterized by respect for cosmic law, always having violated those of their own civilization. Upon refusing to deliver or to deactivate this weapon, which nullified cellular life and threatened technology, all bioorganic energy, and the peace of the solar system, they reinforced anew the fraternal struggle. In the fury of battle, the terrestrials left terrain. Greater civilizations of other solar systems came to aid the Maldekians. It was then when the terrestrials decided to activate that powerful weapon focused to make the planet Maldek lose its magnetic field to the end that it would provoke collisions with its nearer planets, the nearest being Mars. Upon losing its orbit, the planet Maldek lost enormous amounts of energy. The scientists discovered that such had been lost, and one night decided to destroy the powerful force that encouraged the aggressiveness and the power of the terrestrials. A powerful ray projected from the Maldekian laboratories fell upon that great city, Atlantis, dividing the continent in two. And it was this that opened that great portion of the earth, and that fatal night the entire city was drawn completely beneath the ocean. Other lesser cities had been alerted that a great inundation was about to flood inhabited land, and some of those constructed, with the help of the scientists of Maldek, enormous embarkations in which they rescued those who desired to flee such danger. Upon dividing in two, the enormous continent broke up and killed also many innocents, sinking slowly into the sea that had surprised the great city, and displacing the divided territories, one toward the east and the other toward the west, losing the magnetic pole of the earth. From then, it is still errant. The earth, your planet, changed its orbit, and during much time great inundations tell upon innocent nations ignorant of that conflict. Today, the continents continue moving, causing the emergence from the waters of territories that were submerged in that night. Your world is in continual movement since then. The planet Maldek continued losing orbital energy for some time, until its inhabitants immigrated to other worlds which gave them asylum. Finally, that planet entered on collision courses with Mars and Jupiter and even your own Earth. Its enormous aerolites fell like a rain of stars on the adjacent planets. Some of that cosmic dust still is found in the rings of Saturn, and others were reaccommodating themselves in the region that today you call Belt of Asteroids. That weapon remains undiscovered under the sea in your world. The interstellar community is worried now more than ever because the sun's rays now aid and provoke the activation of its force, which though weak still can provoke magnetic changes on your world and molecular disintegration. This antimatter weapon still manifests its terrible effects in imprecise form, but with sufficient frequency for the scientists of your world to be attentive to what occurred in that place. It makes the compasses, the communications, and the marine navigation suffer alterations with considerable regularity. It still moves energies in vortex when it detects living energy in its surroundings once activated by solar force, and its anti-molecular field is stimulated when it detects any kind of apparatus moved by reaction. In fact, it moves with a sound. It still is manipulatable and highly dangerous, and for you there is no way to get to it on pain of exposure to its force, as destructive as it is powerful. It is still deadly. There are still many stellar civilizations striving to obtain it, and, though not obtaining permission from the greater civilizations, travel to your world to study, to analyze, and to seek to extract it. But neither they nor yourself, but only greater civilizations who have sufficient knowledge and who totally control anti-energy and antimatter can deactivate it. Of course, we could also deactivate it. Remember, that pertains to a scientific and exploration group, but it would be such as to expose your planet to the emission of antimatter forces. We profoundly respect life, not only material, but energetic as well. Our principles are based on care for the species and the nurturing of them. Under your present circumstances, you cannot control this, no. The scientists of your world, with your science and your knowledge, still do not understand perfectly the control of the forces of hyperspace for navigation, nor that you need enormous forces of energy to control your ships. The exploration of space will cost you millions of hours still before you understand the dangers of space. Because of that, you could not control it sufficiently to bring it to the surface without your people suffering terrible genetic effects. Upon bringing it to the terrestrial surface, cities situated hundreds of kilometers away could disappear in an instant, as has already happened in antiquity. The extraterrestrial ships could do this, but the evacuation of energy would be fatal to many of you. Only a very advanced civilization could do it. Otherwise, the magnetic field of your world suffers notable modifications. The anti-energy emission is detectable by our sensors. Many cosmic civilizations know its location. You will know also, because very soon the scientists of your world will try to get to where it is, but few or almost none know really what it is and what it represents, much less detecting its origin. Many ships which pass through this anti-magnetic field, launched toward space, suffer alterations in their navigation program, for which accidents sometimes happen. Such ships with their energy force stimulate the anti-magnetic power by their passage. American scientists have already detected this. Some scientists are worried by what occurs in that zone. But listen carefully. Your destiny is being slowly changed. Earth is a world without cosmic supremacy. We believe that your world should know what exists there. And we also believe that your society must become more peaceful before having the exact knowledge of this weapon, to be able to accept the idea of living in peace and never use it against any civilization. But already, there's not enough time. Beings of other minor cosmic races, rebellious, imprudent, and ambitious, would take it at any price. They know that if they leave it there, someday it could be used against them or against others. Today, the terrestrial generations are moving toward more belligerent confrontations. On our world, as on many others, the children are trained to the consciousness of the living being and intelligent as such because they know that someday they will inherit the planet. Then later they try to develop optimum courses of quality and higher intelligence. But the children of your planet live in violence day after day. All of your marvelous apparatus of communication show them wars between one and another country without them knowing exactly why they fight. The continuity of these events predispose them to aggressiveness. The parents exercise no control over this because they don't know how to do it. The best and the worst of these assurances are being given from the bosom of the home, and those are the generations that will someday guide the destiny of your planet. The level of superhuman consciousness is unknown. The respect for life is discarded. Love is conditionally controlled without knowing that this is the sentiment that must improve as the beginning of respect for people. Human values do not as such, and even continue showing the child a world without love, full of violence, of hate, of rancor, bitterness, corruption, of ambition, and of ignorance. Your world is one of those produced by diverse ideologies tarnishing this beautiful blue planet. Discordances of pride and power strive to show that peace is only obtained by war, subtle as well as perverse circumstances in a decadent world. You still have a place in the galaxy. The civilizations that survive acquire a place by right. If a society or civilization does not survive as such, it has no right to possess this weapon or any other. Because it has demonstrated arbitrarily in the control of others, it will have no right to knowledge of this. Too many wars have filled the fields of battle with blood. For what then would you possess such a weapon as this? It would only serve you for the destruction of one another. The first universal law is knowledge. After this one obtains possession. If you prefer to guard this that I have told you in secret, then do it. I am not obliging you to tell it, but it is important that your world know that they must reevaluate their own attitude toward their own planet. Your sciences, Professor, have destroyed vast lands in honor of nuclear experiments. You are destroying your own habitat. It is giving birth to a new generation of aggressive irrationals. But you yourselves are the only ones capable of changing this. The world, your world, is not prepared for this power. You will encounter really alarming signs that beings of other worlds intend to come to your planet from different spatial coordinates. That weapon, as bait, attracts extraterrestrials of diverse races and of distinct level, which still has not encountered the method of developing one similar. If someone decided to try to recover it, you would be exposed to its immense disintegrational field, or could go mad if this field is weakening. Many animals in migration avoid it by instinct, passing where this weapon is found, though I can tell you that in one night entire flocks were literally swallowed up by the anti-energy without your being told. Life in space is uncertain for the anti-energy that surrounds it. The worlds of superior intelligence survive. Hundreds of clouds of antimatter swarm to the length of entire galaxies, absorbing celestial bodies in their passage. The civilization which does not know these dangers succumbs before them. For that, the knowledge of the great intergalactic scientists is important, since only they know the great mysteries enclosed in the universe. My father is a great scientist. We know through him the most secure lines of intercosmic navigation. Well, this force is concentrated in a small receptacle fixed in some place between those islands that I mentioned. There will come a time when you will work on molecular and anti-molecular disintegration without utilizing the atomic level. It will not be easy, but neither impossible, since you possess the genetic level for the investigation to develop it. You want the power of a planet without having discovered still the secret of longevity to enjoy the gains that you actually have. For so small is the ambition, and much less the time that you live to see the fruits of this science you contribute to, but continues to advance, even if those who control all these forces are children today, those to whom you have brought aggression and violence. The time that it would take to deactivate this weapon by the scientists of the rest advanced countries of your world would be unpredictable, as would also be the effects that it could cause. But someone or a group could begin to undertake the idea of the deactivation, always with peaceful intent, on the contrary of which your world would be converted into an arid planet like many others in the universe, if for some reason they moved with imprudence. Also, I must tell you that some scientists of your world are experimenting with weapons of such sophistication that it will not take long before they come to understand the nature of the antimatter which the ocean guards. I say to you, Professor, you who has studied high levels of nuclear energy for your world and what in our levels still is found in primary phase, understand that it represents a grave threat to your world, but also for ulterior civilization. This is the most terrible legacy that you have received from the past, which nevertheless you do not. No, another legacy that you have received is genetic modification, through which you have such a short lifetimes. The peace of the planet must take priority until the men of Earth succeed in evolving to a scientific level, respectful of the forms of life that surround them. I have shown you the tendency to decadence. Each time, during one determined cycle, on your world, you reach a level of knowledge or cosmic level in your moral formation within the decadence. If you were to see this antimatter weapon, you will probably be surprised by its inoffensive appearance, but within that same is found the weapon that is capable of exterminating your whole world. The ocean jealously guards its secret, and the water in some manner attenuates its effects, though not all, and for that it remains being highly dangerous to approach. The magnetic field of our ship repels all anti-energy force. Our negativizer of energy is powerful, but for us this weapon is important. You are destroying your own planet. You continually search the universe trying to perhaps encounter something else, that which will come in a form inevitably destructive to assault your planet. The terrestrials demonstrate decadent tendencies, nevertheless the majority live in a period of transition, that is to say of changes, of metamorphosis. The eclectic community simply observes. Only you can resolve the internal affairs. It is the respect of free will, of the liberty to act. It is a form of living, though that could be disputed, that is respected. Nevertheless, you are gaining, if that is what you want, and they demonstrate access to great intergalactic knowledge. However, contrary to that which you hope for your community, the terrestrials demonstrate clear tendencies to decline. The decline of this civilization began some time ago. As thinking beings, you began to incur this in your own species. In only 1 century, you have carried out sufficient nuclear tests that because of which, for the next 200 years, your humanity will be exposed to radioactive residues from explosions in different parts of your planet. Overall atmospheric and climate pressures are still major global issues. This will provoke the solar rays to stimulate the molecules of all living organisms to their maximum level. This will also make many of the viruses that assault the terrestrials reach their optimum resistance. Nevertheless, this will exercise a major stimulation of the cerebral neurons, which contributes to the acceleration of the neurophysical changes in the humanity of your world. The memory and the intelligence will be the first cerebral zones to show sensible changes. This will transform the character of each individual according, of course, to the resistance of each one. The changes will sharpen, whether they are positive or negative, but your own tendencies will always become more acute. The grade of abnormal neuroses will rise noticeably. As a consequence, your aggressiveness will increase, and the percentage will rise day by day and month by month. Characteristics will increase, and intelligence will be accentuated, but also says stimulations will generate decadence in the individual as such. Although it seems to you sometimes that this could benefit humanity, it will prejudice him greatly in genetic order. He will become susceptible to diseases for which there are no known treatments. Respiratory ailments and neurological illnesses are one form of organic abnormality on your planet. Overall, many respiratory and neurological illnesses are increasing globally, but the reasons differ depending on the condition. After that will come all kinds of degenerative sicknesses. The births of genetically malformed beings will accelerate. The human race suddenly will be confronted by changes in genes, of DNA and mutation. Many species of animals will have disappeared. Others will show mutations, and still others will have lost the characteristics of their race. This will show you that thanks to the indiscriminate use of nuclear tests and the dangerous contaminants that poison the water and the air, the race is suffering mutations. Some of the greatest tragedies of humanity began because of circumstances that seemed ingenious and inoffensive at the time. Because of that, upon analyzing the effects over time, we must first observe the experience, which gives us a retrospective view of the past. Much of that which has been done in the areas of science has resulted in death to humanity. The accidents which have occurred in nuclear plants and those which will occur in the future contribute still more to sensitive atmospheric problems. There have been more nuclear accidents on your world that you are not aware of, and for this also there are many reasons. In the first place, you still are not capable of beneficial use of nuclear energy without problems, threats, and dangers to your civilization. There are risks. The movements of ground, such as landslides and earthquakes, though slight, endanger the nuclear plants. This should make man think and know that his habitat is not adaptable to nuclear plants of any kind. And the loss of ozone increases the temperature or diminishes it according to the case. This will easily affect the nuclear plants. No, you still are not capable for that. It also influences the external movement of the planet. Moreover, the pressures of gravitational change from that date began to increase, which could also put the nuclear plants in danger as well as other important things. Someone needs to stop this, because the result in the future will bring unacceptable damage to humanity. Man, despite his advance, his intelligence, his desire to overcome the barriers of his habitat beyond the atmospheric level which surrounds your planet, opens a great highway towards his own destruction. It is imperative to open a breach toward more knowledge, physical and moral, of the terrestrial being. He has degraded the water, a liquid of optimum excellence, not only on your planet, but in all the universe. He has dirtied his planet, has destroyed hundreds of thousands of living beings, animals, plants and rivers, lakes and oceans contaminated by man, not to mention his absolute lack of respect. Disrespect not only shown toward those others, but manifested toward himself. There will come a time in which any energy of your world will have a cost much less than that of water. Your world is slowly being converted into a place inappropriate for life. We desire to sound an alarm at once, exposing several reasons. Starvation is not a sentence. It is only the result of world disorganization. You have not dutifully capitalized the goods of the earth. There is indignity, ambition, pride, and you manipulate entire populations, blackmailing them with grains and greens and oil. It is time that you begin to enjoy a true peace in your world. It is time to show the intergalactic humanity that you also have the right to life and knowledge, but this you must authentically earn. If today you could take a step backward and stop the nuclear advances in only those which are employed in the use of risky chemical combinations, your terrestrial community would have made an important change and thus one step towards survival. The scientists argue that to stop science is to stop the world, but that is not true. You cannot feel pride in a science that values only its arsenals of deadly weapons. The next decade will show the contrary. The terribleness of this is that the tribute to the weapons that today are found distributed in all countries is the death of hundreds, perhaps thousands of innocent persons, some of which never heard talk of the liberation of the atom. This end finds no justification whatsoever, not the least being that if science is to advance, you have to sacrifice the life of a whole planet and even prejudice the life of the solar system. The chemical weapons produce degenerative illnesses not only in men that come in contact with them, but in the water and the plants that have been contaminated and poison other forms of life, as well as to prejudice the human organism. In your world, the scientific advance is very dangerous. Not so in superior civilizations. Not only on my world, but in other civilizations, they have something like an important agreement on the advance of the civilization through science, the principal importance always being the preservation of life. D. Tests do not take into account the proportion in which you make them, and if they treat of weapons, they should be tested in their minimum proportion, though with our procedures there is no need to test this and that. We utilize enormous brains that indicate the combinations to us such as can make the results as well as the potentiality and the damage that could be provoked in different mediums or different planets. We must not destroy, not even in areas that could have a high probability of benefit to our community, if perhaps those weapons could leave residues that might damage some small part of our planet. By such, we abstain from affecting a world only for the benefit of a limited number of inhabitants. Our rules and regulations are severe, but sufficiently secure as to not expose the security of our world or of others on which life is manifested. If we change any of these rules, we could see ourselves exposed to severe judgment before the major community of those who associate with us as allies, as co-partners in investigations and co-partners in knowledge acquired at large by our search of the universe. But we must, to obtain this interchange, show that we are highly trustworthy and that we are not going to negatively utilize the knowledge acquired. We must show that we are really an adult community, controlling our emotions, as well as having a profound respect for life, for beings of other planets, for organisms in evolution, and finally for that which vibrates in some form of existence. If we alter those rules, we will be left out of partnership in the intergalactic community and interstellar community of great knowledgeable beings who help us so much. The knowledge is shared. The cooperation between the advanced civilizations and mutual investigations have made it possible for our race to advance in more and more knowledge. For this, for all that has been lost when ambition moves the great countries of your beautiful planet, we feel that it is time that the terrestrial begins to look beyond himself. It is essential that all have access to this knowledge. It is important to have access to knowledge. All the races distributed throughout your world pertain to the species we call ephemeras, things that exist for only a short time. That is to say that your time of life is very, very short compared to races that succeed in living thousands of years. The time of life of the human of your world is so short, and the damage that is inherited through your descent is so great that we are worried. Really, the damage left by past generations of thousands of years to the present time is minimal compared to that which has been left you by only 100 years of your generation. In less than 100 years, your inhabitants have produced much more damage than in all the previous epochs. This is due to your acquiring the knowledge of destruction, and this you view not only as a means of survival, but it also is seen as an augmentation to ambitions and the desire for power. Those who preceded did not have access to this knowledge, not in the proportion that you have. We believe that you are not aware of the transitory circumstances of your existence and the characteristics of your race. Much that is absurd in the processes of your world, and it seems illogical to us that you permit this among yourselves. Those powers that engage in bloody invasions, mercenaries who kill only for the desire to do it, have killed to give way to a civilization still more criminal than that of Genghis Khan or Adolf Hitler. Why? Do you not understand that the time has come to reflect upon the damage wrought to your planet? Look, for example, due to the loss of the ozone, your climate in many parts of your world has changed. In this also you have the injection of an orbital change of 14 degrees that your terrestrial axis has deviated. You are losing your orbit, and for that the climate of your countries has changed. But of this, though it is a really significant signal, you have taken no account, immersed as you are in your own hallucinations, in your desire to reach powers in proportion without measure. You are like unconscious creatures on the universal plane. Your changes are beginning to manifest themselves. There are really notable men in your world, men that authentically desire to live in peace, who respected themselves and for others, but there is still the greater imperative of the enormous interest that all those options that might be indicative of emotional maturity discontinue. There are races in the universe who have great interest in your world, races that surely are intending a great conflagration and explosive fire among yourselves that will allow them to take possession of your world and its inhabitants. They inspire all kinds of murderous feelings in weak hearts and minds. The strong will try to move toward a system of conscience and balance, of harmony and respect. Some of you are strong, though you still move in a circle from which there is no easy escape. The future of your planet is not alluring. There come times truly difficult, really dramatic. Your world and its destiny worries us intensely. But it is precisely for this respect that we come to civilizations like yours. We cannot interfere. We can only suggest a change if perhaps you happen to be predisposed to it. Avoid the apocalyptic destiny that is predicted for your world. In many cases, you can make it. In the first place, you must stop your aggressive tendencies, which today is a common thing on your planet. Even small children already show characteristics of aggression. The frustrations. Supplant the normal benefits in your life. Parents do not demonstrate love to their children for fear that it will be interpreted as a weakness, but that is no more than pride. Nobleness has been lost in 60% of the cases. There is a false value placed on principles. An intelligent being, such as the human of your world, does not deserve to terminate himself violently. Your religion and the extraterrestrial threat. This had generated religious changes, and with that, hundreds of the dogmas which are manifested today on your planet. You have distorted ancient facts which now could well bring to light of comparative parameters. That which I have told you to the light of a developing science which could offer you a capable analysis of many of our forms which to you seem extraterrestrial. Many of your chronicles and text recordings speak of angels, of beings who fly, etc. All of that, nevertheless, is perfectly explainable today, but before it was not possible to do this. Each society, so to speak, interprets according to its idiosyncrasy. That which seems to them almost divine. Is there any way to change the future? Also, how can you come into contact with civilizations that could not only help you, but orient you? Well, as in all of the societies, there exist in this universe civilizations that demonstrate various grades of knowledge. To arrive at the greatest and highest teachings of the higher civilizations, you must have a minimum knowledge of space law, and observe above all things a complete and genuine respect for life itself to modify your laws to a regulation of acceptance and of harmony. That would benefit you. Your tendency toward the defensive has made you highly dangerous beings. But then how can you know who comes in peace and who does not? It so happens that those who could help you cannot approach you collectively and still cannot. You must grow in knowledge and augment your receptive capacity, modify your habits. And God, where is He? Does He exist in truth? Listen, in the chronicles and text recordings of your world, there appeared beings who could fly, overcoming the attraction of gravity. In one of these histories, there appeared two civilizations simultaneously visiting your planet. One overcame gravity in a manner different from the other. The first flew from one place to another and could proceed with ease wherever they wanted. Their magnetic field permitted this, but that field was not visible to the others. The others still did not possess the secret of negativizing of light in the magnetic field for which these shone and were visible. In time, many adopted this knowledge and began to utilize magnetic fields of energy to repel the gravity of your world upon arriving and descending to the surface of your planet. Those beings who floated and shone with a radiance much surprised many of those inhabitants of almost 5,000 Earth years ago, or between 300 and 400 of our cycles back. Your surprise increased when I told you of the capacity they had to displace themselves to another place. And above all, the ship in which the extraterrestrials travel produced much fear in the inhabitants. The inhabitants at that time knew of nothing similar. For them, all of this was divine. These then came to consider us gods coming to Earth. But those were like us, and we have nothing exceptional except our scientific advances. Those who show decadence in their sentiments and their acts can lose many rights of interstellar level. We cannot lie, nor can we destroy, for which many of us know and aid each other in space. They came to your world with the intention of informing all who would be able to understand of the inhabitants of Earth. But many obstacles developed between the extraterrestrials and the Earth humans. The humans did not comprehend that there were other inhabited worlds like yours. They were controlled by one criteria unified under one chief, in such a way that the chief imposed his ideas on all the others, and they accepted it or saw themselves obliged to do so. The terrestrials only interpreted one cycle and one Earth, and they believed that those extraterrestrial beings were gods whose powers were superior to all they had seen before them. Because of their manner of dress, The terrestrials could not decide whether the extraterrestrials were men or women or both. They deified them to the point of fanaticism. There were such diverse and so many interpretations that the humans formed separate groups, and there still exist confrontations between entire societies over these ideas. Each city adopted their own interpretation, according to their own tastes and their own histories, after which they became mythified. And finally they became so distorted that even we could not understand what had been recorded on the rocks. Your scientific terminology has not reached those specific levels that convey the greater knowledge, and for that you do not comprehend absolutely all that I explained to you, and this derives toward uncertain points, praising them to these apparitions which were taking forms in ever-increasing locales, to the end that they became identified with the society in question. The subsequent generations did not understand much of that and began to ask questions. And the teachers of yesteryear were not showing the point exactly correct. Those who came from other worlds wanted to explain who God exactly was, but before that, they needed to inform that they themselves came from other worlds and were extraterrestrials, and that others possessed the same genetic makeup, shape, DNA, etc. As yourselves, their anthropomorphic form did not convince the terrestrial inhabitants that they were human. They knew that they had seen a being descend from the sky, and they would never admit the contrary. The event was considered so extraordinary that it was engraved on rocks and stones for posterity, but they did this in accordance with their knowledge and mentality. In those times, the people of your world did not exactly understand this extraterrestrial phenomena, and that explains in part much of the falsehood encountered in your monolith. But if it was difficult then to make the inhabitants of your planet understand our extraterrestrial origin, it is not easy now to make them understand that many of those apparitions that they saw did not pertain directly to the nature of God. Those who came to your world were only informants or investigators and observers who studied and analyzed the future of your world and its comportment and behaviors. The facts occurring were involving the terrestrials in a labyrinth that, more than historical, was mythical, disquieting and worrying those minds and intruding upon the feelings. The people were afraid, and this made it easy for them to be controlled by those outcomes of the kings, chiefs, directors, and leaders. Though in some manner the idea was not lost, the message was diverted into obscurity and being changed in substance between one translation and another. Those who did not understand rejected it or relegated it for later analysis, losing many times thus important information. This also influenced the grade of knowledge of each society, because in some manner this contributed to the ever greater retardation of the advance of man. In truth, we never could understand why you did not understand the message in the correct form, for at least that of the origin of the civilizations that visited your planet. And today we fear that you will yield to the same. We are, all of us, you and all the other inhabitants of the universe, the excellent creation of an infinite being, most powerful. God exists, of course, and for us it is the most powerful bioelectrical magnetic force which controls all vibrational movement of a passive state and active state and vice versa. God is both life and death. That which you call death is the vibrational state in repose. Effectively, the great bioenergetic force of God creates and absorbs, ebbs and flows. It is an inexhaustible source of knowledge, whose power is only perceivable to you through matter, for which you know it superficially and at times unjustly. In truth, there exist hundreds of forms of life, one of which is energy in its most pure manifestation. These bodies are uniquely energy vibratory. To us, they are invisible entities or beings, bodies like magnets that attract structures of their same species. They can conduct themselves throughout the whole universe, and that scarcely would be the tiniest example of which could serve as a concept to show you what God is. An invisible body cannot absorb another, not precisely. On that point, there is no intent for dominion of one entity over another. Those bodies attract those with which they associate, but they don't annihilate them. They also possess a powerful repellent force, and can transit incalculable spaces and can be here now and on another world in form simultaneously. Yes, actually, their power is immense, but God is above all that which you cannot comprehend. God cannot be understood through threats nor through fears. God has given life, and life has a force, a cycle, depending on the force with which it has been created. Nobody in the universe has the right to take life except for his own survival. Even before some injustice in the ultimate moment, you must not kill. All in space carries a continuous state of harmony. To alter it costs much to whoever tries. God is above all living forms that swarm in the universe, and I can tell you that matter, as you know, is the manifestation of the most primitive of its power. God is not ruled by time nor space. Time and gravity are inseparable. If we measure something and it has weight, we can evaluate its gravity, then we can know that it exists. God exists, though we cannot measure its knowledge, its weight, nor its capacity. We also search the beginnings of our science thousands of cycles after our own origin. We initiated our investigation of our genetic conformation and its formula from beginning to end, but the most interesting was the DNA molecular system, as you would call it, and to learn that we could reprogram all of an existence in a manner such that this could produce a race of genius which could adequately receive universal information of an interstellar level. For example, your primitive DNA suffers no alteration, for which the human can live through one cycle of regeneration, though it is limited. There are no changes in the love nor hate intervening to reduce the energy. There is no reformation of your structure. You can reprogram yourselves in a manner according to your mental or intellectual capacity, supposing that you have no limits, replacing old concepts with new, or those knowledges can improve your perceptions, both mental, visual, auditive, etc. This is the way you want to really improve the genetic time of man through his DNA. And we have success in these experiments on our planet. That was in the beginning when we inquired much into the existence of the being as a living entity, and above all, the origin of God. Today for us, this is so old that it is genetico-scientific history. On our planets, they developed great changes and improved our races by reprogramming the genes without genetic deformation. It has cost much, but today that is possible, and there still are scientists who are occupied with this on other planets. The measure of such knowledge expands, and they strive to know more and more, and then they disseminate this to the greater races, always alert to the maintaining of communication with the objective of retransmitting the results obtained. Thus it was that they came to know also new worlds, and as such they made the gift of life to those which they found insufficient development and with resources necessary for intelligent survival. The rule in interstellar society is to eradicate the degenerative instincts and raise man to a superior level, each time better than before. Our mission comes to be that of teachers who also begin from zero like all of you, with the difference that on your planet you cannot duly obtain the knowledge because the scientists unfortunately die, and with each generation some of the relative initial knowledge is lost.